Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 103 of your favourite Formula 1 show. Knowing Wheel returns this week out, of course, to look over the antics from the Bahrain Grand Prix. And of course, as always, just like the last 102 episodes, I am not alone. I am joined by the North's second fastest go-karter. He's moving down the ranks, slowly but surely. Jamie183, how are we doing, mate?
Who's better than me?
Me.
Who? Are you in the North?
Not right now.
Well, exactly. There you go. I'm number one. Sweet. Sorted. Yeah, I'm good. I'm sleep deprived and watched the race very late, but we're here. And I watched it on Channel 4, effectively having not seen spoilers, so it's real, kind of.
Still sounds pretty real to me, I won't lie.
Yeah.
But of course, as always, before we get into that, though, a bit of general housekeeping for you all. If you're watching on YouTube, there will be timestamps linked down in the description as always, so you can fast forward or go back, or if you just want to sit back, relax, grab a drink, listen to us in the background as well. Of course, there will be links to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Of course, we cannot thank you guys enough for the continued support, and we're really, really excited for more Knowing Wheel here in 2023. But, Jamie, pre-weekend, of course, 5 minutes after we finished off the Bahrain preview show, we spent 10 minutes of that podcast talking about Felipe Dragovic's debut, and we're not joking, genuinely 5 minutes after we finished recording that show, Lance Stroll confirmed he would be racing.
Yeah, and it turns out he actually had a broken toe as well.
Yes.
So 3 broken bones that were not fully healed, so fair play to him for racing, but I guess when the car is second fastest, supposedly, according to Alonso, then you probably would rush your recovery. But yeah, it was classic irony of recording anything that's going to have quite a short lifespan on YouTube, and then it's got an even shorter lifespan when one of the main things you talk about is suddenly obsolete.
It's immediately wrong. I reckon then, Jamie, I think we've now got to start trying to tempt fate here. I cannot believe Max Verstappen has decided not to retire from Formula 1.
Yeah, I think it's crazy that Fernando Alonso announced he's going to race in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it? Are you suggesting you don't want Alonso to race in Saudi Arabia?
Oh, I think I love him. He's great. Keep him coming.
So surely you should be saying that he's not racing in Saudi Arabia.
I can't believe Nico Hülkenberg said that he's not moving to Red Bull to replace Sergio Perez.
There you go. See, now you're getting it. But yeah, of course, I think we were all a bit surprised, weren't we, that Stroll was racing. Of course, there were a couple of safety concerns early on in the weekend. Could he get out of the car quick enough? It was still obviously that thing, wasn't it? The footage of him going down towards turn 1. Where obviously he was having to bring his hand off the steering wheel, which I've now learnt as well. I do at every corner, so apparently I've broken my wrists, and I didn't realise. Yeah. Of course, not in a real Formula 1 car, but still, besides the point. But practice, Jamie, we'd hyped up Aston Martin, or a lot of people had hyped up Aston Martin. I think we both were quietly reserved, weren't we? We thought they'd be
expecting
close.
better rest, but I wasn't expecting anything necessarily more than that.
Well, neither of us really wanted to say more than that, did we? Because A, not really did either of us, I don't think, fully believed it. And B, of course, the other one would have given them so much stick when it turned out they were only best of the rest.
Yeah.
But now we've kind of ended up with both with egg on our face, haven't we? Because, second fastest in FP1 and pretty much matching Max Verstappen on race runs was Alonso. Fastest in FP2 and fastest in FP3. There suddenly was this sense of belief going into qualifying of, oh my, could Aston Martin actually do this? Are we looking at Brawn 2.0?
We were thinking the fight for 3 world championships back in 2012 was going to make its return, where one of the drivers are still the same.
Yes, yeah.
So,
10 years later.
Yeah, 11 years.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. But yeah, everyone was getting very much on the Aston Martin hype train. I still thought that at least Red Bull were going to turn it up when we got into the competitive stuff. Yeah. And I kind of thought Ferrari would still be second, which I think ultimately they would have been, obviously hypothetically. But yes, very good stuff from Aston generally.
Yeah, I mean, incredible, of course, all weekend, which we'll discuss a lot more as we go through. But, there was kind of this weird balance, wasn't there, of course, because we still had, the likes of Alpine, who were weirdly, quietly confident. about everything going on. But of course, where winter testing and the first race weekend was all at the same venue, and of course, it's not a track that is likely to get any rain or anything like that. There was kind of that weird thing between, we knew roughly what the order would be like, but there was still bits of it we didn't want to believe. And of course, the first real indicator you get of genuine pace is, of course, in qualifying. And, I mean, it wasn't long before Ferrari did Ferrari things, but I think 2 minutes into Q1 was sooner than any of us expected, wasn't it?
Yeah, slightly. I actually missed the first 10 minutes of qualifying, so you're going to have to talk us through it, because I still haven't seen it, because it's not in the highlights either. So, yeah, what happened?
Charles Leclerc, one of the first drivers to go out on his first run in Q1. I think he went out on a set of medium tyres, if I remember correctly. And basically, it was kind of just, it looked like it was just get an installation lap in, get a decent time on the board. He comes out the final corner to start his lap, and it's always quite difficult to describe, because I don't know if they've actually got a proper name or not. But the inside of the wheel cover that is like in front of where the brake ducts are, or just above it, the bottom half of that, for seemingly no reason, just falls off and lands on the racing line.
So a very short red flag. I do wonder, I guess, yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if they could just put effectively a VSC out.
No point, is there, in qualifying?
But there is no point in quality when you pause the clock. So, yeah, interesting stuff for a Ferrari's car, self-destructing before they even turn it up to full at all. So, yeah, good start for them. But their pace throughout the rest of the quality was okay, and obviously it was a very minor issue, so they just fixed it. Was it on the wing? Or did they actually have to fix it?
No, so they put a new one on, basically.
Oh, fair. Okay.
Of course, that whole I'm guessing it's connected to the brake system. So, of course, they just took that whole one off, or what was left of it, and just bolted a new one on.
Yeah, fair.
But, of course, that was the only red flag, though, luckily, in Q1. But, I mean, I think always the first race of the year is always interesting to see, who's where, whether winter testing has told some porkies or things like that. But no major surprises, I suppose, out in Q1. Magnussen, Piastri, De Vries, Gasly, I think, was probably a bit gutted in his Alpine, qualifying last. But it's got to be said, I think a shout-out is due to Logan Sargent tying Lando Norris in the Williams car there, but gutted for him. The fact, obviously, he set the lap time after, which, of course, meant he was out in Q1.
Indeed. And why don't we go to a what would it be, 1,000th? No. A 10,000th.
Yeah. 4 decimal places.
Because they do an IndyCar.
Yeah.
So clearly the technology exists to be able to track cars.
You could go down as far down as you wanted,
basically, yeah.
You could go down to 8 or 9, I would have thought.
Because it's not like a common problem, but it happens at least a few times a season when people are eliminated by 0.00.
Well, it doesn't normally happen when they're eliminated, does it? We do get ties, but it's not often normally like that.
But when the whole grid is split by 1.2 seconds at the end of Q1, there's chances...
There isn't much reason why they shouldn't, is there? Yeah. I think is kind of the point now. Of course, IndyCar do it in a slightly different way anyway, because they measure it on your speed, the way they do their qualifyings. But it does beg the question, doesn't it, nowadays, about why don't Formula 1 shift to 4 decimal places? Or, of course, whether if you do get a tie, then they show you the 4th decimal place. Then they look at the 4th, yeah. But it's one of those things where, of course, you can only go so far where you're just splitting hairs. But it is one of those things, of course, where I guess you've got to play the game, because for all we know, Sargent did actually do a quicker lap time other than Lando Norris, but I guess they've kind of got to draw that line somewhere.
You do have to draw it somewhere.
We know what will happen.
Nothing.
Yeah, they'll do it to 4 decimal places, and then someone will tie that, and it'll go down to 5, and so on and so on. So I think just keeping it at still, whoever does the lap first is fair, but I think 4 wouldn't be too ridiculous.
No, not at all. And straight into Q2 then, and again, I wouldn't say not many surprises, really. I think Norris getting as high as 11th, I think, was quite creditable to him.
It was a positive surprise, yeah.
Yeah. Because obviously he was 15th in Q1. The car was probably 2nd or 3rd slowest over the course of the weekend. So to qualify 11th, just on the brink of the top 10, really good stuff from Lando. And we obviously know that he's a top driver. We've said that many times in this podcast. So, yeah, pretty good stuff to beat both Alphas in 12th and 13th, and then Tsunoda and Albon as well. Although Albon didn't set a lap time, Tsunoda's lap time was about 2 seconds off, so I think he didn't have any or didn't want to use a new set of tyres or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of really Norris and the two Alphas who were trying to get into Q3 and didn't. But one man who did get into Q3, which I was very happy about, was Nico Hülkenberg.
Here we go.
Yeah, you have to give him some credit on this one. Did very, very well to get into Q3 in the Haas when his teammates in 17th.
He's a fantastic qualifier. I'll give him that. Nico
He's always
Hülkenberg.
been a very strong qualifier.
Shame he can't do it when the points are available.
Well, can't is a strong word.
It's the accurate word when we look at the final results.
I think the Haas is very poor on its tyres. I think they knew that in pre-season, so I think that'll be a common theme of both drivers, Magnussen and Hülkenberg, doing very well, or more well in qualifying than they do in the races.
I ship Magnussen. I reckon that's the couple to be for 2023.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. But when we get to Monaco, Spain, those kind of tracks where you can't overtake, that'll be helpful.
Sorted. So,
yeah, podium at Monaco. No, not podium. 6th place at Monaco.
I mean, yeah, as we look, though, of course, into Q3, though, we still had the likes of Alonso, the likes of Charles Leclerc. I think there was still kind of this belief, wasn't there, that Red Bull were going to run away with it in qualifying. And often they were fastest, but it was by enough that you believed, if someone got that worldly of a lap in, they could make the difference. And then we get into Q3. Verstappen sets the pace on a 1 minute 29 point something. Charles Leclerc does a 1 minute 30 exactly, which was quite impressive, but horrendous looking on the graphic when they were doing the race grid rundown, because they just had 130 and didn't do the rest of it.
Did they not?
No, they just put 1:30. It looked awful.
That's funny. It's like 1950s timing.
Exactly. And then Perez and Alonso inside the top 4. And then Ferrari continue to do Ferrari things. And despite the fact Leclerc's 1/10 off pole, with a fresh set of soft compound tyres, they keep him in the pit lane. They just don't send him out again.
I think, actually, it's a bit of a more discussion for later, but I'll do it now anyway. I really think they're overcompensating a bit. They're like, right, we have a new strategy guy. Let's do all of the really fancy, complex things that a strategy could do, such as saving a set of tyres in Q3, such as doing a double stack for no real reason. It's almost like laying down a marker of like, we're a serious strategy team.
Woo,
now.
Look at us now, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, well, especially the qualifying one, the double stack obviously didn't go wrong, so I guess there's nothing wrong with it. But it was kind of just doing it for the sake of it, to be like, look how good we are at strategy now. When actually, was it a good strategy? I think Leclerc definitely could have been ahead of Perez if he'd done a second run.
This is the thing, isn't it? Because Ferrari did say why they did that. Of course, was they weren't focusing on Red Bull this weekend. They were genuinely just worried about Alonso. Yeah. But if you're only a 10th away from the Red Bulls after the first runs, why aren't you focused on them? You're
Especially
10th away. Just go
Leclerc's
for it.
Biggest attribute as a driver is probably the final run in Q3.
Leclerc, I'd still say, is a better qualifier than Max Verstappen.
Probably, yeah. I would agree with that. And yeah, it was very bizarre. It was almost like the new strategy guys trying to impress the bosses and be like, wow, look how much new stuff, we're a serious team now. But yeah, it was a little pointless.
Bizarre. But that, of course, then meant that Verstappen, he improved, went down to a 129.7, which was a mad lap in the end there. Sergio Perez joined him on the front row, only a 10th away. Let's not forget, Sergio Perez was very close.
Wasn't dominant on Saturday from Max.
Leclerc was probably quite lucky that Sainz didn't beat him, and then Alonso went 4 thousandths quicker than Russell, and then he and Hamilton were covered by half a tenth. With Lance Stroll ahead of Ocon, who did pretty well actually in the Alpine there, and Nico Hülkenberg DNF'd Q3 apparently.
Yeah, he'd used up all his tyres, I think, to get there, so didn't get a proper go at it, unfortunately. But yeah.
Well, there we go then. That set the grid for Sunday. Both Red Bulls, both Ferraris, and then the Aston Martin ahead of both Mercs, followed by his teammate. And things almost got incredibly dramatic almost immediately, didn't they, Jamie?
Indeed. The run down to third 4. Alonso...
I meant before that.
Oh, even before that. Yeah, Perez and the Ferraris were incredibly close. It could have been a horrific accident, really, because if one of them cars touches the other side pod, could be flips and all sorts, and you're running second and third on the first lap, and it's like, wow, that could have gone wrong. But thankfully it didn't. But Perez did end up losing out to Leclerc for P2. Verstappen was just on his own at the front. Basically summed up the whole day, really, unfortunately. unfortunately for the spectacle of the race at least. And yeah, the Ferraris both had a go at Perez. Perez was able to hold on to P3, but it could have gone really badly wrong.
Well, honestly, for me, watching that down towards turn 1, there's one race to describe what could have happened there. Singapore 2017. Two Ferraris squeezing a Red Bull. Because it could have been identical.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it could have been worse, probably, because it was a lot higher speed now as well than it was then. But yeah, thankfully for their sakes, it didn't. But the run down to turn 4 was probably equally as dramatic between a set of teammates, with Lance Stroll battling for P9, I believe, with Ocon.
No, it was battling George.
Oh, was it
P8?
Was it Mercedes?
For P7, sorry.
Completely missed his braking zone, it felt like. Or like just jumped on the brakes way too late, and then maybe it was a knock-on effect from having messed up turn 10 on the formation lap. I'm not sure. But yeah, he just completely missed his point of braking and rammed his teammate. I'm so surprised that those two were able to both carry on with no issue, because it was a big hit in turn 4 with Alonso kind of cutting under and Stroll sending it from so deep.
Well, I think this was the thing, wasn't it? Don't get me wrong, incredibly lucky that they both got away with that the way they did. But it just, again, is one of those other instances where you just see that difference between an instinctual racing driver and a decent racing driver, or a racing driver. Because, of course, basically, obviously, what happened was Stroll hadn't actually broke late, looking at it, in all honesty. He would have got that car slowed down absolutely fine. The problem was he panicked and whacked on so much steering lock that then, of course, the tyres they don't really like to turn and brake that much at the same time. If he just kept the steering straight, he would have got it slowed down absolutely fine. And even, he might have been able to get a run on Alonso, depending on if he got bogged down battling Lewis still. But it was just the fact he panicked, and like you said, was so lucky, because my winter prediction of Alonso meltdown at Aston Martin could have happened immediately in the first race of the year. Because, of course, then we had the rest of the afternoon Alonso asking the team whether someone got a penalty for it. And, of course, they're just going, stop talking to the boss's kid like this. Because, obviously, he thought it was George that hit him.
Yeah. And I guess he wouldn't have known. And it was quite a big hit. It cost him the position to Russell, didn't it?
Yes, on the exit.
He was behind Hamilton already, battling Hamilton. And then the exit was so poor because he was busy not trying to spin out that he could have easily... lost more than that, but he ran 7th for a bit at the start of the race, and eventually did start making his way through, but he was kind of the main talking point, really, wasn't he, Alonso, for the rest of the race?
Pretty much. It was what most of our eyes were on throughout most of the afternoon. I mean, I was quite surprised as well to see people pitting as early as they did. Lewis Hamilton, of course, was the first one of the front runners to box at the end of lap 13. That battle between George Russell though and Fernando, again, was brilliant to watch. And again, it goes to show my argument. Formula 1 want to create a better show for people. Start telling the drivers they have to give each other a car's width on corner exit. That's how you get good racing. It's so simple still. It's
how the battles go on for more than a corner. Because if not, you're just on the inside and you shove him off and you're done.
Barge him out and you take the place.
Yeah.
I don't get how the FIA haven't made this the rule still.
Yeah, and it's interesting, but I was very, very excited when later in the race when Alonso started battling Hamilton, because those two are probably the last of the generation of drivers who actually have some respect for each other.
Yeah.
So... that was a very big spectacle for the rest of the race. But Alonso racing anyone is always quite fun to watch.
Yes.
So to see him in action at the sharp end of the field was lovely, to be honest.
It is a weird feeling, of course, because, you get those occasional flashes where he's been at the front, but it really, for us, does just hark back to our childhood, doesn't it, Jamie?
Yeah.
We haven't watched Alonso consistently battling at the front since we were 13 years old, which is mad to think about. Absolutely insane. But of course, we had the first round of stops, and of course the thing is with Bahrain as well, they had changed the DRS zones this year. They had made them slightly shorter, which I did think made things a bit more exciting. But of course, it's still quite an easy track generally to overtake on. Hats off as well, though, quickly, because I think it got very quickly forgotten about. Bottas actually jumped both Fernando and George Russell early on in the race, and that Alfa Romeo throughout the first stint was looking quite racy.
It was. I want to kind of say best of the rest, because if we're going to lump Aston with the top three, we might as well. Because he was never really challenged for that effectively ninth place. What would usually be ninth if there weren't any retirements. So yeah, kind of very similar to last year, where he's just doing the business in Alfa Romeo at the start of the season.
Yeah.
So fair play. He had a little experience of P6 for a little, but I think the Alfa Romeo doesn't really hold a candle to the other two.
He should not be fighting there. No, exactly.
No.
I mean, he was very quickly jumped again by them, but the fact he was close enough to go for it was quite impressive. Of course, the other big question we had early on, though, in the race was, everyone had gone soft to hard, apart from Red Bull. They went double softs, which made me start to wonder, was everyone else planning a one stop and Red Bull were two stopping? But the answer was no. Red Bull just had much better tyre wear than everyone and completely ruined it because their car was also quicker than everyone.
Yeah, and it was a bit ominous a little when the I don't know, I was watching Channel 4, so it was kind of like a bit more cut up than a regular race live, and every time it cut, it was just Verstappen was another 3 seconds clear.
yeah
Which was like, okay, here we go, 23 races of this, let's get ready. But yeah, I wasn't able to follow much of the practice news that much, but the mediums just weren't used at all, which I thought was a bit weird.
No, they had the pace of the hards and the tyre expectancy of the softs. They were useless this weekend.
Yeah, so it's a bit weird from Pirelli to, maybe they got that wrong, or maybe they could have gone
I think, like everyone says, so isn't it? Bahrain's just such a weird track.
Yeah, it's true.
For that sort of thing. But I guess, we obviously, a lot of the time we were watching the battle at the front of the field, but there were a few other things going on. Of course, first big one was Oscar Piastri having to retire from the Grand Prix with an electrical failure of some sort. We're still not 100% sure what that is even now. But McLaren were just having a meltdown, weren't they? We thought last year's opener for them was bad. This one was on another level.
Yeah, completely. And yeah, I think it's a real problem. I mean, Bahrain, obviously we saw last year, it's not a very strong track for them. But if they can't get it fixed quickly, they're going to be dropped by the likes of Alpine, Aston Martin. They'll hope they'll be battling, but I'm not sure. Alfa Romeo, yeah. I think the blessing for them is because we kind of have, or it feels like, certainly from that one race, we've got a big four, is that really those teams are scrapping for scraps, like 9th and 10th.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
So the gaps won't get that big in the midfield at all if it does stay like that. But obviously Aston or Mercedes could be rubbish at other tracks, and then you're back to how you were before. But we shall see.
Well, we'll see. And of course, we spoke Oscar Piastri had to retire on lap 18. Lando Norris was having to come in every 3 or 4 laps or so later on in the day because the car kept running out of air, which is always good.
Classic Singapore 2017 for Hülkenberg on a full podium.
Yep.
We love that. But yeah, it was basically a testing day for Norris after the first hydraulic problem. Also a testing day in more ways than one for Esteban Ocon, who had an absolute mare.
Where do we start with this one? Just a comedy of errors, wasn't it, from Alpine?
Yeah. I am not an Ocon fan. It was.
I don't think he has many, to be fair.
No. But he got a penalty for being out of grid spot.
Yep.
He then picked up damage on lap 1.
Yep.
So at the first pit stop to serve the first penalty and change the front wing, one of the mechanics put his hand on the car 0.4 seconds early.
I thought he was unscrewing it long before then, to be honest.
I watched there was a video on F1 channel today. It was half a second too early for one mechanic that then gave him another penalty.
Yep.
And he had to serve the first penalty again.
Yep.
And then on serving the second penalty, he sped into the pit lane and got another penalty.
For that. I mean, I'm amazed he's actually leaving Bahrain without getting a race ban, to be honest, with everything that went wrong there.
Yeah. I don't know if he gets penalty points for any of that, but if he does,
he will only for the speeding one, I'm pretty certain.
Yeah.
And even then, it's probably only 1 penalty point, I would have thought. Or he might just get a warning, to be honest.
This is not the quiz, but last driver to get 3 penalties in a race?
Pastor Maldonado, Monaco.
Indeed, but it was Hungary 2015. But yeah.
Oh, was it Hungary 15? No, we got 4 at Monaco, didn't we?
He got 4 at Monaco in 11 when he crashed and deliberately just swiped Perez in practice.
Just swiped Perez in practice. And just went on a rampage all weekend. Good times. Good times. But of course, there was still battles going on towards the front of the field. Max was kind of Harry Potter meme waving off into the distance.
Yep.
But of course, from the start, Perez was still behind Charles Leclerc. But like we mentioned, of course, Red Bull did a double soft stint early on, which meant lap 26. Perez also did the Harry Potter meme to Charles Leclerc. So, of course, we kind of had the Red Bulls running away with it. We had Leclerc looking pretty comfortable in P3. Mercedes and Aston Martin, though, was still having quite a good battle. I've just noticed on my notes there I put Lance jumped Stroll, but actually he jumped Russell, was what I meant to look for. But then, of course, a bit later on, we started getting feisty Fernando Alonso again. Lap 37, as we mentioned a minute ago, him and Lewis started deploying the battle. And this is what you've got to watch this year. Because did you know, Jamie, if you're a Sky customer, if you press the red button, you can watch any of the 20 onboards. I want to know what button it is to stop them telling me that every 2 minutes.
I reckon it's Jensen.
I hope it's If it was Jensen button, perhaps I'd be tempted.
Yeah.
But if those two are near each other on track, that's the battle you want to be watching in 2023. And they did have a couple of very good battles, didn't they?
They did. And Alonso basically making his way from 7th to ultimately 3rd was
spoilers.
A big story. Yeah, sorry. If you got this far without seeing the race, then what are you doing? Yeah, his battle with Lewis was really, really good. Was this the one they made contact on? Was that was Sainz?
They never made contact, yeah.
But yeah, like Fernando doing switchbacks all over the place. Lewis being wise to it, leaving spaces where he had to and then not where he didn't have to. Excellent stuff. Really, really good spectacle for the sport. And those two going at it, I could watch all day.
Yeah, they do. And I think it's that thing, isn't it? Because, of course, there's this very fine balance that only, I'd say, Lewis and Fernando have got. Of course, of that generation, like we mentioned earlier, about the old breed, they still have racing respect. But, of course, it's also not difficult to forget. They don't like each other still.
No.
They will absolutely try and get one over on the other anytime they can. And, of course, sadly for me this weekend, it was Alonso getting one up on Lewis.
Yeah. And hopefully that's a common occurrence throughout the season, but we shall see. I do think the Aston, certainly in Alonso's hands, was probably the stronger car than the Mercedes.
Alonso said it was the better car, to be fair.
Yeah. But it was really, really great battle. So hopefully they're similar paced all season, and we get plenty more of that.
Yeah.
But we shall see.
Yeah, and then, of course, we come to lap 41. We forgot to mention this, actually, during the intro to the race, but Charles Leclerc had already taken new components. He'd taken a new energy store, and I think it was a new control electronics, ready for the Grand Prix. Lap 41, Ferrari do a Ferrari, and the car stops working. And what failed? His second energy store. So he's broken 2 of those in the first weekend of the year, and you get 2 of those all year. So there's a very good chance heading into Saudi he's already got grid penalties.
I think the first one was precautionary, so they could go back to it, but then there's no reason if it's the same component, why wouldn't it break again? So it could be a race to 10-place grid drop, which is just ridiculous for engine penalties.
I mean, it's
very,
just
very
Ferrari. I mean, it does start to beg the question, isn't it? How long will Leclerc put up with this?
Well, he's into his 6th year with Ferrari now? Fifth year with Ferrari, which is about as long as a Ferrari driver's lifespan is with the team.
Sanity will only dictate you go that far with Ferrari.
Yeah, so obviously it was unfortunate for him, but he was only on for 3rd place, and it's a long season. So the pace was there. He obviously performed very well throughout the weekend. But it was quite funny, so it was worthwhile.
It was funny in the way sort of painful things are, aren't they, sometimes, where you can only sit back and laugh. And we're not even Ferrari fans, but, I mean, I think the thing that got to me as well, of course, was he wasn't really going to challenge Red Bull come race day, but he also was the only driver that could have challenged Red Bull. Sainz was a bit in the middle of nowhere. Alonso probably, I'd say the Ferrari car is still quicker than the Aston Martin. But it just, Leclerc was the only one sort of keeping Red Bull honest, wasn't he? Throughout the most of the Grand Prix, or at least Checo anyway. That's why it was just a bit frustrating. Lap 44 though, Yuki Tsunoda, this one I didn't see live. Quality little double overtake double overtake on Zhou Guanyu and his new teammate Nick De Vries.
Yeah.
He did comfortably put De Vries away this weekend.
He did. And I think it took us a little bit by surprise. I think the AlphaTauri being so slow was not a huge surprise to us if you watched last Tuesday's video, but yeah, he did well. Unfortunately not to score a point in the end, but he did. It was a good overtake on Zhou and De Vries, I think, helped by De Vries not stopping under VSC, so was on hard tyres that were very old. And Zhou had stopped for softs about 5 laps before the VSC, which kind of screwed him over because he lost out on a cheap pit stop. But yeah, good overtake from Yuki, and difficult weekend for them as a team. But 11th, I think, did he finish 11th at the end? I think
11th. Not bad going.
It could be his best result of the season based on
might well be
the car pace, but we shall see.
I don't think the AlphaTauri was that bad this weekend, to be fair.
It's probably bottom three or four though, wasn't it?
What, teams?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you had McLaren doing nothing.
Yeah.
And then every other team was pretty... I mean, once you get out of the big four, Jamie, there's only 6 teams left to choose from.
True.
So bottom 4 isn't actually that bad. But of course, the last real on-track battle, or the last real excitement we had, of course, was the Battle of the Spaniards. Carlos Sainz, who looked up to Fernando Alonso throughout his childhood, and this is one of those ones where you meet your childhood hero and he punches you in the face, because Alonso just absolutely whooped him.
Yeah, and I think we could all see it coming. Sainz was not really on it at all on Sunday, I don't think.
It was just one of those weird races, wasn't it, from Carlos Sainz, that you see a lot where he kind of just goes missing, and you never really find him. Yeah,
and he's just sort of there. And if he had got a podium, it would have been quite undeserved. But yeah, it was kind of a no man's land race, which is why I think we strongly believe that he won't match Leclerc over the course of a season, which I think is why everyone believes that, just because he is a bit like Bottas used to be at Mercedes, where yes, he'll pick up the odd good result, but a lot of races he'll just be in the middle of nowhere.
You remember those races where he matches him, but there's a lot of races where he doesn't, and that's why Bottas would lose a world championship with 4 or 5 races to go mathematically. But I mean, there was obviously a bit of contact though between Sainz and Alonso at the top of the hill. Again, though, that was Alonso. He was absolutely wringing everything out of that Aston Martin. Yeah. But there were a couple of lucky moments for him.
There were.
But of course, got the switchback on Sainz down the support pit lane straight, and obviously moved himself up into P3. And of course, Hamilton was still watching this battle, but unfortunately, his tyres pretty much went off at the same rate.
The Alonso moves on Sainz and Hamilton, by the way, both excellent.
Well, the one on Sainz was DRS pass. The one on Hamilton, though, I will give him credit, was a good little move.
DRS pass down to turn 11. You don't see them very often.
It's not uncommon, particularly this weekend, especially when the car in front locks up through turn 10.
Yeah.
But of course, that meant that come the end of the Grand Prix, 57 laps worth of racing, it was Max Verstappen who took the win. About 11 seconds, wasn't it clear? 12 seconds pretty much ahead of Sergio Perez there. Alonso, 38 seconds back. Not really a great look.
Ominous.
For
I think
Formula
Red Bull
1.
turned their engines down as well.
Yeah, to start the year. And of course, Sainz another 10 seconds behind him ahead of Hamilton. Stroll did actually beat George Russell, which I think Russell...
Not great from George, I don't think.
Russell might have... Well, the thing was, of course, Russell moaned at Hamilton on the radio how he needed to hurry up on lap 10. And then we never heard anything from him again as he just went backwards.
Yeah.
But Bottas, like we said, a very, very good result by him. Gasly, though, probably actually, to be honest, I know we're jumping the gun slightly, one of my drivers of the day. From the back of the grid up to 9th, he did do a fantastic job and, wasn't far away from getting the jump on Bottas as well.
A couple of good moves, one on Tsunoda was very good on the outside turn 1 as well.
Exactly. And another one who definitely deserves a shout out, Williams, 10th place to start the year, and Sargent was in 12th, not far behind.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously they're boosted up a little by the retirements further up, but still, that's very, very good. I think Williams, if you offered him a point, they'd have absolutely taken it. So Albon starting the season basically as he left off last season, just kind of being there to feed on the scraps. And
picking up exactly the prizes when you can. Picking up on those points. And of course, we gave Nico Hulkenberg a special shout out in qualifying. 15th come the end of the race behind Kevin Magnussen.
He got damaged. Someone hit him. I think he hit Ocon at turn 4.
He hit Ocon is what happened.
Ocon turned across him.
I think he was kind of putting his nose somewhere it didn't belong, to be fair.
Probably, yes.
And also, after the Grand Prix, I don't know if you saw this, Hulkenberg also received a 15-second time penalty for multiple track limit violations.
Oh, well, I rate that. That's big.
So, you'll be pleased to know, he only beat out Lando Norris, who was 2 laps down, And Zhou Guanyu, another driver you're a big fan of.
Also, Zhou Guanyu, I want to actually highlight this because I don't think many people saw it. Gasly had the fastest lap at the very end.
Yep.
Zhou, I think, was running 12th.
Yep.
So Alfa Romeo pit Zhou to take the fastest lap off Gasly.
Yep.
Because obviously they are hoping that they can battle Alpine throughout the season.
It's a sensible choice.
It was. And I actually rated that because I feel like a lot of teams would have just missed it and not bothered. So Zhou did get the fastest lap. So there we go.
And I think this is the good thing as well, of course. That's a promising sign that, midfield teams can go for fastest lap, which I quite like the idea of
especially when Red Bull have turned their engines down.
Yeah, it makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
But I think, it's a fine balance, isn't it, Jamie? I mean, a lot of people are already saying, the season's over and things like that. And I think we always respond to that going, yes, don't get me wrong. We want to see fights for the win week in, week out. But there's a lot of enjoyment elsewhere around that grid. We could see a titanic battle between Ferrari, Mercedes and Aston Martin. Yes, it'll be for who also gets on the podium alongside the Red Bulls. But, you know what? We've gone through some pretty boring Formula 1 seasons before. We might end up going through another one this year. It's what
we thought this at the time in 2021, but we were treated so well that year.
Yeah.
that, actually F1 isn't like that very often, which is what makes those years so special.
Yes, yeah, and I think
so this
is what we're going to find over the next couple of years, isn't it? That a lot of fans that did come in through 2021 are going to be very disappointed because there's a lot of years where things are a bit dull.
100th win in 2027.
Oh, don't.
What was that? Win number 36.
Win number 36, I thought was insane.
Yeah,
because he's now 18.
Close to Senna.
Well, Senna had 41. Yeah, he is, isn't he? That's mad.
Yeah.
He's a long way off Senna's poles, though.
Yeah, true. Senna was a Saturday merchant, so...
Senna, the thing was, I always find mad about Senna was, of course, he took all those poles, but it was only in the space of 100... It was 120 Grand Prix he actually had a chance of getting pole in.
Yeah.
It was a 50% odds he was just going to take pole at a weekend, which is kind of mad. But very,
stuff.
Very off topic.
Very. And speaking of drivers who, have less world championships than they deserve, fewer world championships, sorry.
Okay.
Fernando Alonso took the 11th different driver to take a podium for the Aston Martin / Racing Point / Force India / Midland / Spiker / Jordan team.
Okay.
There are 10 more drivers.
Okay.
And I haven't got to time it yet. You've got a minute to name them, beginning 10 drivers who've got a podium for that team.
Yep.
Since 1991.
Yep.
Starting now.
Damon Hill.
Indeed.
Ralf Schumacher. Heinz Harald Frentzen. Sergio Perez. Lance Stroll.
Good stuff.
Esteban Ocon.
No.
Okay. Obviously Hulkenberg never did. How many is that? Sorry, already.
You've got 5 left. So you got 5.
Oh, I thought I'd done more than that. Let's think. Early 2010s. De Resta never did. Obviously Hulkenberg never did. Have I left one out from the 90s or the early 2000s?
Well, there's one that carry on.
There's one that carry on. Okay.
No hints. 20 seconds.
I went so strong there at the start and I've fallen apart immediately. I've already mentioned Stroll, Ocon. Ocon didn't. Perez.
5 seconds.
Oh, I can't believe I just came into that so well and just fell apart immediately.
The overconfidence has done you in.
Let me just clear my mind for a second. Let me try and get... Were there any from the 2010s? Early 2010s?
09 there's one.
Oh, yes, Suttil, of course. I remembered him as well. Fisichella, sorry. Fisichella.
Suttil never got a podium. Yeah, Fisichella. One from 2021, which is quite amusing.
Oh, yeah, Seb did. And I even remembered that one when you were telling me the question. Oh, dearie me.
Yeah, and then the other 3 are quite difficult, but 2005 US, which is a bit of a cop-out.
Oh, yeah, here we go, yeah. Not Narain Kane, the Portuguese guy, Tiago Monteiro, of course.
Yeah, Monteiro, and then the others are from 92 or 93, I think.
For thingy?
For Jordan. Rubens Barrichello.
Oh, yeah, he did, didn't he?
And Eddie Irvine for the other one. So they were quite hard. But you definitely should have got Vettel and Fisichella.
I should have got Vettel and Fisichella, you're absolutely right. And like I said, when you were going through the question, I remember remembering those two.
Yeah.
But completely forgot about him when we got into it. I panicked under the pressure. Under the high stakes pressure.
50%. Probably one of my easier categories, and you've flopped.
Yeah,
so,
there we go. Yeah. Right, Jamie, let's head over. Driver of the day. I think there's a few that we can mention, isn't there? But there's probably one that everyone's going to say.
Yes. Pierre Gasly. I will actually give it to Gasly because he did very well.
No, I think
Alonso
Gasly did do an incredible job as well. But I think we're all saying Alonso, aren't we, still?
Yeah.
Verstappen deserves a shout out there. And also, I think Alex Albon deserves a shout out in that group as well. But yeah, it's either Alonso, I think. But Gasly probably also did a fantastic job there. He could have come from last to finish best of the rest, to be completely honest.
He wasn't far off, no.
Come the end of the afternoon. And I think Bottas as well probably deserves a bit of a shout out. 4 points on the board for them. F1 Fantasy. Mr. 183. Of course, we've only got one list to go through this week because, of course, there's only one race so far. I did okay, I'm going to say.
I did okay as well. So, yeah, my team was very different to what I announced on Thursday, as I said it would be. But, yeah, I think it was quite easy.
Who did you change out then? Who did you put in your team?
Oh, I can't remember what I had. Basically, I ended up wanting Leclerc, which was a mistake. So I had Verstappen and Perez and Alonso at one point, and then swapped out Perez for Leclerc, which meant saving money elsewhere. And I also wanted Red Bull instead of Ferrari, which I did, which meant my second. I had Hulk and De Vries, which wasn't great.
Fair enough. How many points did you score then?
How many points did I score? How do I actually get there?
Go in your teams and go pack completed. They've changed F1 Fantasy around this year.
It's very annoying. I scored 235 points.
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes!
I think I was screwed a bit by having Leclerc. If he had finished third, I would have done way better.
I beat Jamie! I actually,
it's a marathon, not a sprint.
I actually had a mad team this week, looking back. It was only Hulkenberg that screwed me. So, of course,
budget anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I had Verstappen, who netted me 70 points.
Same
Hulkenberg, who lost me a point.
Same here.
Gasly, who netted me 20 points.
Oh, yeah, fair.
And I had Perez and Alonso. So I had the entire podium.
The whole podium.
And I had Red Bull and Aston Martin.
Same here. I think it's going to be a very, very strong template this year of Verstappen, Alonso, Red Bull, Aston Martin. And then people are going to choose between Perez and Leclerc.
I am very, very happy with that. I think, to be honest, if I'd binned off Hulkenberg and put Albon in, I could have been right up towards the front, looking at it.
Yeah, definitely. But a long way to go, and we're not nervous yet.
We've also just gained 3 teams since I refreshed F1 Fantasy. So if you haven't joined, get yourself in, please.
By the looks of it, a lot of people haven't joined.
No one plays F1 Fantasy this year. We had nearly 5,000 members in last year. I hyped this up, and we're at 780. Get yourselves in, please, if you're one of the 6 people still playing.
Globally, last year there were about 4 million
more
teams
than that, I think.
And now there's 1.5.
Yeah, no one's playing this year.
Yeah, it's a dead game.
It is. And they've changed it around as well, so I think there was a lot of potential.
A lot of confusion.
So, Jamie, the top team this week was basically my team, except for they had Zhou Guanyu in instead of Hulkenberg, and Stroll in instead of Gasly, and he also tripled Fernando Alonso.
Yeah.
Which was
I don't get how Alonso scored
sensible.
more points than Verstappen. Oh, he got driver of the day. There's a point. There's points for driver of the day.
Is there?
All right, Alonso's staying all season then.
Yeah, he's going to get absolutely mugged for that. So 377 points would have been our top score this week, and that goes to Cry Milton Formula 1, which of course I absolutely love. Mobile Leg 17, just 7 points back. Basically the same roster, except for they had to freeze in instead of Zhou Guanyu. Vleur Steel ahead of Sea Eagle and Valtteri It's James, rounding out our top 5. We're tied actually with SL Motorsport there. Where are you currently then, Jamie, in the league?
Out of 780 teams, I am 274th. So you will obviously be ahead of me.
I'm 100th! Tied!
Nice.
I will actually take that if I can finish the season in the top 100. And I've just found my favourite team. Someone has called their team Jam Strolly Poly.
Nice, I like that a lot.
That is brilliant. And someone I've noticed had called their team Might Do Bad, and it was identical to mine. so that's not helpful. Clearly someone saw my preview and thought, no way am I going anywhere near Matt's team for this season, which is probably wise, because come round 4, Jamie will have already jumped me again.
Yes, indeed. And speaking of things that I'm going to beat you in...
Yep, that's a fantastic segue. Thanks for that.
We shall move on to F1 predictions, which I'm just too boring to make it fun.
Yeah.
So it was entirely possible that I start the season with 8 out of 8, but then Ferrari screwed Leclerc. So I only got 6 out of 8. But you know what? I'll take it.
Still better than my 2, because Ferrari screwed me and Leclerc probably wouldn't have got pole, but it would have been nice if he did. So say he had got pole, I could have been on 4, you would have been on 4. And say he not retired, you would have been on 6 again. And I would have been on 5. Instead, Jamie's still on 6 because he put Red Bull at the front. And I'm on 2 because I just got Verstappen winning, correct?
Yeah. And you were egging me on to get Alonso, or put Alonso third as
you
a
could
joke.
have got all 6. You could have got all 8, sorry.
I could have done.
But you didn't there. Final thing though, Jamie. Race rating out of 10. What are we saying? Bahrain Grand Prix. A lot of people have said it was a bit mid.
It was alright, wasn't it?
It was okay.
I would give it a 6.5.
Okay, I thought when you were going to say it was okay, you were going to go sort of a 7 or so.
Not far off.
I'll say a 7 then. Often I'm a little bit more optimistic about these things than you are.
We should keep track of this, and then at the end of the year we've got a categoric.
We are.
This is the best race.
We are going to have a defining race of the year come the end of the season, which won't get screwed when Hamilton wins one and I give it 14 because I will be in control of that chart.
You get double points one race.
Yeah, you get to boost your favourite Grand Prix.
Yeah.
But I think, the Bahrain Grand Prix, an interesting season opener. Could we be in for the greatest championship fight of all time? Probably not. But there's still potential somewhere. There's a lot to look out for over the course of this year, Jamie, nonetheless. And I think it's still going to be, 23 exciting races to carry us through the all-new year.
Maybe 22 with Spain there. But...
Well, no. New track.
True.
Give it a chance. Give it a chance.
Mexico, then.
Mexico, fair enough, yeah. But I don't think we've got anything else to go through then, Jamie. Of course, we will be back next week then, ready to preview the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. But as always, I'd just like to say thank you to you for joining me.
No worries.
Yeah, we've done it. Race 1, 22 to go, ladies and gentlemen. Knowing Wheel is back. Formula 1 is back. Red Bull are back. We can't wait to see you again next Tuesday.